So the Texas Longhorns continue to be one of the more intriguing teams in college football, in my opinion. They're coming off of a really big win in Iowa State, something we'll talk about a bit more as we get into the video. But this is a team that when you look at them on offense, when Quinn Ewers is playing, that's a high-powered, exciting offense. When you look at them defensively, this is a defense that's still growing, ranked as a top 50 total defense in the nation, but it's not a complete picture yet. It's a picture that's still being painted, but it's enough to give Longhorns fans excitement about what's to come. But this weekend is going to tell a lot about where the Texas Longhorns are, because this weekend they play a ranked opponent in Oklahoma State, an opponent that they're going to have to travel to. Today, we need to talk about why this is such a big opportunity for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns, break down this game, and talk about everything in between. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe the Texas Longhorns continue to fly high and get another big win against Oklahoma State? Let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions are massive for content creators such as myself. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And I want to start talking about that Iowa State win, because in the intro I talked about that I thought that was a big win. I understand there are going to be people out there that look at that Iowa State team and say, yeah, but that wasn't a ranked Iowa State team. This isn't the Iowa State of old. And you're not wrong. It's not the Iowa State of old. They don't have the veteran presence. They don't have the veteran players that are really able to impart such a positive difference. However, this is an Iowa State team that's incredibly disciplined. It's an Iowa State team that's very well coached, and it was an Iowa State team that did have a top-ranked defense, a top 20 defense, and a really solid rushing defense. So for the Texas Longhorns, it was still a really good test. On top of that, I think it was how they won the game, what happened the week prior. Because one thing we've come to expect with the Texas Longhorns over the past few years is that they'll get big wins, but it's what happens after those big wins. Because after those big wins usually comes a heartbreaking loss, something we saw this Texas team be able to avoid. I think that's a tremendous step in the right direction, and especially when you look at how your team is playing overall, where the offense has so much excitement, the defense is an improving unit, and you've got to be encouraged with where Steve Sarkisian is in year two, especially with how well his recruiting class is playing. That's got to make a lot of Texas fans really excited. But now let's focus in. Let's talk about this game this weekend, because Texas got a huge win against Iowa State, but they look to double down and get a bigger win against Oklahoma State. And let's talk about the keys to victory for each team. First and foremost, we need to talk about the quarterbacks, because I think everybody would agree the quarterbacks for both of these teams are going to be the X factor, and we need to start with Oklahoma State, because unfortunately, Oklahoma State's dealing with a little bit of an injury at the quarterback position, and Spencer Sanders' status is up in the air. Now, I think a lot of people expect Spencer Sanders to play, but then that opens up another line of questioning. How far along are you? How much are you going to be able to do what it is that separates you from the other quarterbacks on roster? And even if Spencer Sanders plays, the one thing he grants them that is tremendously positive is veteran experience. This is an individual that's played in huge games in college football, and so if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you really want him there. Because when we look at Oklahoma State throughout this year, Spencer Sanders has had a pretty solid year. He's a guy that has tremendous ability, but it's always been about consistency with Spencer Sanders. But he's had some big games this year and been a big reason why they've had some success. Defensively, this is not the Oklahoma State defense we saw last year, where Jim Knowles and that defense would pin their ears back and just go. And that defense was stout last year. That's not the defense we're seeing this year for Oklahoma State. In fact, they rank outside the top 100 defenses in total defense. So it's been a real big fall, but I think that's to be expected with not only a new defensive coordinator, how much new is on that defense. That's something we talked about before this year. That, yeah, they made a good hire at the defensive coordinator position, I grant you that, but you lost so much talent off that defense. I'm not surprised they've slid, but it is interesting to see how far they've slid. Knowles had that defense humming. It's going to be interesting to see how Steve Sarkisian goes about attacking that, because now you're talking about the area of your team that you're weakest going up against the strength of the opposing team, their offense, and the mind controlling their offense, Steve Sarkisian. So whenever we look at this, we need to first talk about Oklahoma State's offense versus Texas's defense, because right there, it's getting the biggest X factor in this game. And the biggest X factor in this game is Spencer Sanders. And the reason I say that is because if you're Oklahoma State, you feel far more comfortable with your chances of winning this game with Spencer Sanders than any other quarterback. Whereas if you're Texas, you have faith that with Hudson Card, you can play winning football. That's still an offense that'll get you in positions to win football games. Oklahoma State really doesn't have that luxury. So because of that, Spencer Sanders is a huge piece for them in this game because of the veteran presence, because of what he allows for them to do. And he's a dual threat guy that can hurt you in a lot of ways. But this Texas defense is a Texas defense that's been improving. Currently ranked as a top 50 defense in total defense. They continue to get better. That's not to say that the picture is complete. I said in the intro, it's a picture that's still being painted, but it is a picture that's showing you they are trending in the right direction. And Pete Kwiatkowski is an individual who, when he was at Washington, had high-powered defenses, but now you mix PK with Gary Patterson, and Gary Patterson may just be an analyst, but it's Gary Patterson, someone who's been synonymous with defense in college football for quite some time. I mean, he is one of the leading minds in the game when it comes to defensive football. So you can bet your bottom dollar that his presence has been profoundly positive for the Texas Longhorns, and I think that's a big reason why we see the improvements on this Texas defense that we see. But because of that, if you're Oklahoma State, you've got to control this game for several different reasons. First and foremost, because this is a Texas defense that's still learning, and you have the veteran quarterback in Spencer Sanders. So in theory, even though Texas's defense is still learning, even though it's still a unit that's improving, the veteran presence of your quarterback opens up opportunities that if you didn't have that veteran presence, you would otherwise not have. And the reason why I bring up Spencer Sanders and his veteran presence again is because if you're Oklahoma State, you're going to have to control the pacing of this game for two reasons. First and foremost, you don't really want to get in a shootout versus the Texas Longhorns when you look at all the offensive weapons they have. And Quinn Ewers is young, but every week he's getting a little bit more comfortable, and you really don't want to get in a shootout with Quinn Ewers, the offensive weapons they have, Bijan and Steve Sarkisian being the mind controlling it all. So if you're able to control the pace, that means you're keeping Steve Sarkisian on the sidelines, him out of the game, and Texas's offense on the sideline. I think that's going to be profoundly positive, something Oklahoma State will absolutely look to do. But it's also about grinding this Texas defense down. This is a defense that is improving. I keep saying that, but you need to take some life away from them if you're Oklahoma State and not let them start playing ahead of the sticks. Because if they start feeling themselves, they're going to start coming downhill. That's where this could be a long day, especially if they start feeling themselves and the offense starts going, because now you're playing into their game. But if we flip this, if we look at Texas's offense against Oklahoma State's defense, well, I think Texas and Steve Sarkisian have got to be very excited because I think they have a lot of ways to hurt defenses in college football, but especially the defense they're going to be playing this weekend. Because last weekend they played a top 20 defense and a defense that had a really stout rushing defense. That's not the case this weekend. Oklahoma State ranks outside the top 100 defenses in total defense, and their rushing defense is actually what they do best, but it comes in at 57th in the nation. So even then, this isn't the rushing defense Iowa State fielded. In terms of passing defense, Oklahoma State has one of the most porous secondaries in the entirety of college football, coming in at number 126 out of 131. And that's problematic because Quinn Ewers has been slinging it, and it's not like it's just relegated to one individual. We saw Bijan catch a pass last week that a lot of college wide receivers wouldn't have been able to take in. Bijan just has that ability to be just as big of a threat out the backfield as he is in the backfield, which if you're Oklahoma State, good luck stopping that. But you have Xavier Worthy, you have Bijan, you have Whittington, you have some young guys such as a Brennan Thompson who's got unreal speed, and if he gets in this lineup, he could be an utter mismatch. You have an Ajayi Hall. Jaleel Billingsley has been able to come back from his 6-game suspension. If he gets worked in this game, it's just another weapon. And then Jatavian Sanders. So Texas has so much in terms of offensive capability. That's why I said if you're Oklahoma State, you're going to have to try and control the pacing of this game so that you nullify all the weapons Texas fields. Because then you're helping out your defense, you're certainly helping out your offense, and you're keeping Steve Sarkisian and all of the talented playmakers he has on offense out of the game to as much of a degree as you possibly can, which I think is going to be exactly what Oklahoma State does. Look, at the end of the day, one thing we have to understand is Gundy has been one of the most consistent forces in college football. No matter how you feel about Gundy, no matter how you feel about Oklahoma State, what he has done there has been really, really impressive. And every year I continue to be impressed, such as this year. I personally thought Oklahoma State would take a few steps backwards this year, and they really haven't. The defense isn't what it was last year, but it just continues to prove my point. Gundy's a really solid coach, someone who probably doesn't get the recognition they totally deserve in terms of what it is they do on field, in terms of assembling teams, being able to have consistency. It's just really impressive. But if you're looking specifically at this game, if you're Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders is the biggest X factor. And unfortunately, it's not like you can rely on your rushing attack, because your rushing attack hasn't been as powerful as you would like. And it actually comes in as the number 65 rushing attack in the nation. So if you're Oklahoma State and Spencer Sanders is injured, you're going to have to figure out a way to play control football so that you nullify everything Texas does well. If you're the Texas Longhorns, you've got to win in a hostile environment. And I think that's going to be a big thing for this Texas team. There's a young team, a lot of young pieces on offense, now go on the road against a top team and really be tested in a hostile environment. If Texas can win this game, it's another step in the right direction. Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking about this game. I'm really excited to see it. I think it's going to provide us with a ton of fireworks, with a ton of must-see moments. And let's be honest, anytime we can watch Steve Sarkisian call plays, it's a lot of fun. So can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.